for her. She was born the year the railroad came to Haw County, her arrival associated by her family with that greatest of events yet known in the area, a harbinger, like the railroad itself, of a good and prosperous future. The more she puzzled over it as a young girl, the clearer it seemed that the railroad brought the misery as surely as the heavens turned in the night sky, as certain as death itself, the hulking black engine and unholy smoking beast on straight and narrow rails of steel. And yet who could deny the excitement the railroad promised, the freedom of movement out beyond the fields and hillocks of the Piedmont to the endless blue horizons of the mountains and the seashore? Mary Bette's grandfathers were men of substance in the decades after the war between the states. Grandfather Samuel, an austere and avaricious grandson of Plickard Diedrich Hartsoe, who'd emigrated from Germany, had but one child, Mary Bette's father, Reason Cicero Hartsoe. It was as unusual in those days to have only one child as it was to give property to anyone but that child. Samuel had done well with his mill and wanted his son to know the feeling of making his own way. He'd done well by turning over the milling to younger men, leaving to others the breathing of corn dust and the wrangling of 2,000-pound stones. The life of a mill owner was much preferred to that of a miller, and Samuel Hartsoe squeezed every penny from his mill that his stern voice and tight-ruled balance sheet allowed. And then Samuel became an old man, and at 71 years of age wanted to be remembered for his civic beneficence. And so, when there was talk of the railroad coming through Murchison Crossroad, as the town was then known, he offered a slice of the land he owned to the north. There was at that time an innkeeper named Captain Billy Murchison, who lived in the center of Murchison Crossroad. Captain Billy was Mary Bette's other grandfather. The fact that he owned and occupied the house of Samuel's father, John Siler Hartsoe, was to some minds an offense that Samuel stored silently in his heart. That his own father would sell his house, the first in the county to have glass windows, to a loud, boorish upstart like Billy Murchison, and sell it for a song, had to rankle. It was in Murchison Crossroad that the stagecoach heading west from Raleigh intersected with the stage from Guilford Courthouse heading south. Captain Billy bought the house he turned into a stage stop from John Hartsoe in 1842, when he was 28 years old. The war was but a minor interruption to Captain Billy's business, which prospered even more afterwards. Likewise, Samuel Hartsoe's grist mill, which lay a few miles south of the village. His one surviving child, Mary Bette's father Cicero, joined up with the Haw Boys, Captain Billy's militia. He did not particularly want to fight, nor did many of his acquaintance, but when it became clear that his future standing in the community might depend on military service to his state, he enlisted. He came back early from the war with a wooden stump beneath his right knee, and was happy to have come home with so much. He married Captain Billy's youngest daughter, Susan Elizabeth Murchison, who was 1 year his senior, and they had 9 children: Tom, Siler, Isla, twins Annie and Willie, Myrtle Emma, Siler, after the first Siler died, Honora, and finally, on a hot June day in 1887, Mary Bette. By the time Mary Bette was 15, nearly all her family had died. Cicero had earned himself a captaincy just before being wounded, but he insisted people call him Mr. Hartsoe, or just R.C., instead of Captain Hartsoe. "I didn't do a thing as captain but get myself shot," he said. He stumped quietly back to the general store he had operated for his father before enlisting, and against his father's will, offered credit to farmers trying to get back on their feet after losing their slaves and their able-bodiedness. In a few years he had prospered so much that he was able to buy the store from his father and build a fine house on 10 rolling wooded acres. The place already had a nice little 2-room cottage, which he spruced up and made into an east wing of his 2-story clapboard house. He bookended the house with 2 common bond brick chimneys and embellished it with hip roofs, 4/4 sash windows, and expansive porches with chamfered posts, spindle brackets, and an intricate